Well, we are talking today about the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Ann Beverly. I own Bluebird Counseling Center in McLean, Virginia. I am joined today by our guest, Traci. We're going to let her introduce herself.
Thanks, Ann. I am Traci Pirri. I am a licensed clinical social worker in Texas, and I own a group practice called Hope for the Journey just outside of Austin. And we help people that have been through traumas, particularly sexual traumas, to heal and thrive. So not just be able to talk about that thing, but be able to really move past it and live the lives that they deserve. So that's who I am.
Wow, very important work.
Thanks. We like it.
Yeah. That's what's funny about mental health is that things that people typically shy away from or say, oh, that's so taboo, we don't talk about that. We kind of run right towards that thing, whatever that thing is. And it's not only our livelihood, but it's our passion. It's integral to our being.
Well, it feels wonderful to be able to see somebody that believes these terrible things about themselves and then to come out the other side and they are not having panic attacks and they are feeling strong and confident and having good relationships. And I mean, like, to be a part of that process and to be a fly on the wall while somebody's making that kind of change is wonderful. And, there's no way that I could be a pencil pusher. No offense to all the pencil pushers out there. I just love being able to be a part of that change process. It's really dynamic.
Yeah, and we both get to work for ourselves. That's such a privilege. So I just want to acknowledge the privilege that we have in doing that. And then,
yes.
I always tell people, I feel like I'm too weird to work for somebody else now. I'm too quirky. I like to make my own schedule. And then the work on top of it is like the best when somebody can say, I finally stood up to somebody in their life that was being oppressive. I finally got a healthy relationship with food. I finally, whatever. It's so gratifying. And I can't imagine doing anything else either. So I'm glad we have that in common.
It's wonderful.
Great. So how are your clients in general, and maybe even yourself, how are you dealing with the pandemic, with a lot of people are reporting increased anxiety. Some people are, kind of naturally falling into symptoms of depression right now by not showering and wearing sweats all day and staying in bed all day. And I think it's really easy to do that if you don't have a job or maybe you've gotten let go recently. Even people just having to work from home who aren't used to doing so. What are you seeing in your practice right now?
Yeah. Well, we specialize in PTSD. So a lot of our clients are actually feeling pretty validated right now because they're seeing other people feeling as anxious as they feel all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are in some ways, finding that at this period of being able to kind of take things back and not have to be out there doing some of the things that cause them tons and tons of anxiety, that's a little bit easier for them to deal with. And but with everybody, there's still ups and downs, and there's good days and bad days. And then, everybody's having to manage their social media and news intake because it can start this spiral of, all the what could happens for the people that haven't had any negative. And then, of course, the people that have lost their jobs or have family members that have gotten sick or are really isolated or, like you said, are kind of falling into that. Like right now, we're just starting to see some of those little early like depression symptoms starting to come. They are, what we're doing is working a lot on how can you create the systems in place for yourself and the structure and boundaries that you need so that you can still thrive in this new situation. And what do you know about what worked for you before that you can then translate into this new setting so that you can still thrive, still be this person that you want to wake up and see in the mirror. So it's interesting, different for everybody.
Yeah. So the systems, are there any universal systems that you think have been particularly positive for people, kind of like a broad stroke? I mean, I realize everybody's different. So they will have to kind of create their own systems. But is there any particular advice that you're giving people that seems like, oh, this is golden?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think the overall system is pretty much like the template is pretty, you can put it on any person, but how it's going to look is going to be very different from person to person.
Mm-hmm.
So basically it's being able to check in and have a system to check in with how you're doing so
Mm-hmm.
that you can actually catch the anxiety when it's building instead of waiting until you're in meltdown zone with your kids, or you're having a panic attack, or you've been in bed for 3 days and haven't showered. You don't want to wait and intervene when it's really bad. You want to catch it when it's growing. So how can you learn to do body scans and check your body for different stress levels coming up? How can you learn to check in with your behavior? One of the things when I get stressed that I notice is I'm a lot shorter with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's because I'm hungry and my husband will hand me a granola bar or something.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's because I'm stressed, right? So if I notice that behavior creeping up, that's a big red flag for me. I need to take a break and kind of like be quiet a little bit and check in with myself and figure out where I'm at on my scale
Mm-hmm.
from 0 to 10
Mm-hmm.
for anxiety or stress or whatever's going on. Do I need to check my thinking, right? If I'm starting to notice that I'm going over and over and over and over again plans for what's going to happen if one of us gets sick, and
Mm-hmm.
that's all I can think about is kind of pre-rehearsing in my head, well, that's a big red flag again, that my anxiety is starting to come up, and I need to take a step back and get out of the future and out of the past and just try and be in this present moment. Because I think for a lot of our clients, we have worked with a lot of clients that are in tech and some other industries that haven't been impacted as much in
Right.
terms of finances coming in,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them have been able to keep their, and yet they're spiraling out.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, but what if? And so a lot of it has been bringing them into the moment and saying, well, right now, in this present moment, what is your reality? And where can you find the strength and gratitude, in your present moment? And then you can step into the future what ifs and do some kind of like, if that worst case scenario happened, what would I do? But then step back into it and try and follow that 80-20 rule. 80% of the time in present time, and 20% of the time you can be looking at what's happened in the past so that you can learn from it or making a plan for the future.
Cool.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, checking in with themselves and then doing something to help themselves calm down, right? Like actually make a plan that works.
Mm-hmm.
So take those deep breaths,
Yeah.
get out and walk the dog, set your alarm at a specific time, work out, make sure that you're eating 3 meals a day, make sure that you're doing the dishes, take the time to do those things that kind of keep order in your life, whatever that might be for you.
Yeah, I always feel like exercise is such an underrated helper, that it gives us the endorphins, it gives us the movement, it gets the blood pumping. I mean, and it's free, and you can kind of just do it anywhere. Like jumping jacks are not, I think some people feel kind of silly doing that, or just like, oh, this is so outside my norm. I don't like it for some reason. But then afterwards, it's like, oh, then they have that sweet relief.
Yeah, and it doesn't like, the evidence is that 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week is the medicine that starts to impact your mood. So that's as good or better than an antidepressant for mild to moderate depression. So it's great.
Yeah.
But I think people, they forget that just doing like 10 jumping jacks releases a ton of energy in the moment. And, when we're talking about stress is all anxiety. It's cortisol building up in your body and adrenaline in your body. And so the way you need to get rid of it is not by saying I need to calm down. It's by doing something to release it. And you're right, movement can be awesome. One of the things I'm doing is in between sessions, I do 3 vinyasas between each client. And it just helps me to like really let go of whatever they've had going on and
Mhm.
touch base with my body
Right.
and just move a little bit. And it's such a good reset in the day. And I need it more often. So I'm doing it hourly.
Wow, awesome. That's such a good tip, you know. I like 5 deep breaths between clients. That's my typical thing. And then I do,
Yeah.
after the 5 deep breaths, I do some thought about compassion or gratitude or love. You know, I will almost imagine what it feels like to be in my relationship with my husband, or my, you know, my dog is really a great source of this unconditional, always happy to see me type of attitude. So I will often
Yeah.
envision my chihuahua in my arms just to have a moment that sort of resets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the benefits of working from home is because we can actually have that time with our chihuahuas,
Yeah, yeah, he's
and
like
it
real
was how
clingy right now. But that's okay. He's there for a
yeah.
reason. I feed and clothe him every day. And I do clothe him. He does wear outfits every day because he's always cold. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah. But
That's
what a
fun.
good tip. Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, exercise is totally underrated. Another thing I've heard about is that people are sort of making plans for the future. So they have something to look forward to. And they're sort of doing it like, worst case, this happens. Sort of
Hmm.
medium case, this happens. Best case scenario, this happens. And I love the thought of having a concrete plan for a vacation or a family reunion or trip to Disney, whatever. And and having a concrete plan but flexibility within that plan.
Yeah.
So that, you know, if this, then that kind of deal. I think that's
But I'd say if you need to look forward to something, then plan something that you can do now.
yeah.
So plan a Zoom happy hour with, your college buddies that you haven't seen in forever. Go ahead and do some things. You don't have to be, I think a lot of people are constricting themselves right now because they're thinking about all the things they can't do,
Hmm.
and they're not allowing themselves to be really creative about
Yeah.
the things that they can do right now. And
That
that's
they
one of
would
the things I
never
think.
do. That they would never
Yeah,
do if we weren't
yeah,
in a pandemic. So it's like the silver
right.
lining that you can create for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to my mom the other day, and she's talking about that they had gotten together with a friend that they hadn't seen in 40 years. And
Wow.
they did a Zoom with this friend that lives across the country, and were able to, like, have this great reunion. And they could have done it all along.
Right. Of
Zoom's
course.
been around for way, way longer than the pandemic.
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
so it's really opening up, I think, some options for relationship building that maybe we hadn't been taking advantage of. So
Yeah.
that's an awesome, like, silver lining, I think, for this time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you can look back at this time, and yes, I think we'll all feel not great about it overall, but you could
Right.
also remember those good things so that in the future, you know, it's not all doom and gloom during this time of your life. You know, there were these
Yeah.
like kind of miraculous events that happen that normally would never have happened. I always like
Yeah.
to remind clients too about things like our pollution level is going down. You know, like there
Hmm.
are certain things in the world that actually are helped by the pandemic. So if you were really worried about the hole in the ozone, for instance,
Hmm.
that hole is getting smaller and smaller. And so,
Hmm.
you know, I just think that there is sort of a rebalancing that happens, and that's almost like on a spiritual level a little bit. But
Right.
that, you know, there are these sort of natural systems in place that I don't know, do help, and of course they do hurt. So I don't want to not emphasize the fact that people are dying and that this is a horrible virus. But every single thing in life has some pros, some cons, and we can't just
Right.
always look at one side or the other.
Well, and if you're looking for ways to kind of insulate yourself or protect yourself from depression, for instance,
Hmm.
being able to find meaning in like a trial, or being able to find some sort of connection or growth within yourself is the like one of the best ways to go through something that's really difficult and
Mhm.
be resilient in it. And so we need that right now. It doesn't do us any good to go through our day and be constantly thinking about all the pain that's there that we can't do anything about. If there's things that we can do, then get busy with that. Sew some masks. There's a lot of people in our neighborhood that are doing that right now.
I wish I
Create
had
some.
it so. I don't own a
I,
sewing machine. I wouldn't know the first thing about it, but I feel guilty. Like I know all these wonderful sewers who are, using their gift, and it's like, wow, I'm so impressed by that because I would have no idea, where to start.
but you're using your gift to do things like this. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean? So
yeah.
it's not about, everybody has to be a sewer, but find things that you do have gifts for, and try to do what you can do to make this better. And I think one of the biggest things that we can do is to focus on the positive pieces that are there. And because that just helps us to be stronger. And every single person that's doing that makes the whole world a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
And so it's something that's within our control. There's a lot that's not right now. It's good to focus on those things.
Let's talk about one thing that is hopefully somewhat within our control, and that's what we're eating during the
Sure.
pandemic. Have you noticed for yourself or your clients that food is coming up in session, that there's anxiety around food right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. My clients have actually been doing fairly well with food. But in my family and my friends, I've noticed trends. And it's kind of two things. One is, and this is true too for some of my clients, but people that are doing a lot of emotional eating. And so they're feeling something, and instead of stopping and processing through that feeling, they're eating to numb or to feel better right then and there. And then there's others that, because it's available,
Mm-hmm.
it's just out of habit, they're just kind of going to it over and over again. So they're just unintentionally having different, either they're eating things that don't make them feel good, or they're eating a lot more, or they're not eating at all because their schedule is so often they don't have the prompts.
So they don't have the energy or the capacity to be intuitive about it because,
Or maybe they're just not bringing awareness to it.
yeah.
For some, I think it is the energy and capacity, and for others, they're just kind of got so much other things on their minds, right? A lot of us are dealing with working from home and managing the kids at the same time, and trying to, like a lot of moms in general, it's pretty stressful, right? To be these huge hats. We've got to be stay-at-home moms, working full-time, and teachers, with homeschooling.
Right.
And
I
so,
can't
like,
even imagine that.
yeah,
It's like a triple whammy of things that you have to
right.
do right now. It's sort of the one time in my adult life I was actually grateful that I don't have children, because I don't know how I mean, I was a teacher actually for 10 years. I was a teacher,
Yeah.
but I don't know how I would be with my own children, having to, meet them where they are. And, they also need things like socialization and,
Right.
routine. And I know that it's
Mm-hmm.
hard enough for me to kind of deal with my own not wanting any structure right now. I can't
Right.
imagine trying to facilitate that for somebody else. I can imagine that's really difficult.
Right. Well, and to have 3 full-time jobs that you're trying to do all at once. So
Yeah.
for some people, there's just not enough time to take a step back and look at how can we do this better,
Right.
And so they're in reaction mode instead of proactive mode. And so things like food get out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
Because we might turn to whatever's, there's been memes on about, I went and did all of my COVID shopping for 2 weeks, and now I'm out of food after day 2 because I just ate everything that was in the
Right.
house.
Yeah.
And, it's stuff like that is just not stepping and kind of taking a step back and looking at big picture, what do I need? And I think that's because this is been such a crisis for so many people. They're in a little mini state of, panic or fight, flight, or freeze.
Hmm.
And so they're not really functioning from a place of, let's be objective about this and figure out how to do this better.
Right.
They're just in reaction.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because that, you know, we all have a lot of anxiety, I think, over what's happening right now. And when you have fight, flight, or freeze, you can't fight the virus. It's too small, and there isn't really
Right.
anybody to fight about it. You can't flee
Right.
because we're all at home and there's nowhere to go. So
Right.
if that's how you typically would react to danger or anxiety or whatever, you are kind of out of luck. Your only choice is to freeze, which just means that the
Hmm.
anxiety just lives within you.
Right.
And
Right.
what do you do with that? I mean, we've talked about
Right.
maybe exercise, and then the numbing with food, I actually think it can be a really positive way to deal with something, because it becomes overwhelming. So of the
Yeah.
alternatives, if it's eat a little bit more or get drunk, I would rather people just
Right.
kind of use food,
Hmm.
personally. But what are your
Yeah.
thoughts about that?
Yeah. Well, I do, because we specialize in PTSD, we do a lot of education on how do you take over that system and bring your nervous system down and get your social engagement system re-engaged.
Mhm.
And the first thing is being able to recognize that you're in that state, and then the second piece is learning what your body needs to be able to bring it out. And
Mhm.
so a lot of that is really small things. And so it's things like, it may not be exercise. Exercise can be really great,
Mhm.
but it may be things like planking
Mhm.
or balancing. It may be things like taking some deep breaths or bringing your awareness to your feet.
Mhm.
It may be a lot of kind of radical acceptance. And, I do this journaling thing with a lot of my clients where I'll have them write down every feeling that they're feeling right now. And we've got feeling lists if they're having trouble kind of coming up with the words. Because when you're in fight, flight, or freeze, the decision making, finding language, all of that stuff just flies out the wind because your brain is back here in the fight, flight, or freeze mode. It's in a
Yeah.
different,
You
functioning
don't
mode.
need language if you're running from a saber-toothed tiger.
Right.
And that's where all these
Right.
things originated.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly. So you've got all this adrenaline that's going, and so what you need to be able to do is bring that back down. So it might be with deep breaths. It might be with writing down all the feelings and then talking about the things that you can't control and
Mhm.
trying to let them go, and then focusing on a list of things you can control.
Yeah.
And that's a kind of piece that we go through a lot to be able to bring that down.
Mhm.
And I keep saying bring it down because literally your energy will feel like that.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
won't feel so up here in your
Yes.
throat. It'll come down quite a bit. Your shoulders will release. There's
Mhm.
just less tension up here,
Yeah.
and when you know that you're down. And that's when, once you get out of that, that's when your digestive system kicks back in. And
Mm.
that's when you'll be able to be more in tune with hunger cues and
Right.
full cues. And
Mhm.
so that's when you want to be going towards things like eating, unless you're, because really and truly eating doesn't do anything to shift that fight, flight, or freeze very well.
Right.
And so it's just not very effective. It does give you a little burst of, endorphins, but it's not gonna, the sugar burst or whatever, but it's not going to really be effective at bringing down the fight, flight, or freeze.
Mm.
And so it's not really about, at this point, it's not about like, what's bad or what's good to do. It's really about what's helpful, and getting really, systematic about knowing what's helpful for you, and
Mhm.
being able to take over, because that's where you have a lot of control. When you can know that you're in fight, flight, or freeze and actively be able to shift that, it's powerful.
I feel
It's
like
really
the
powerful.
awareness is always sort of 9/10 of the battle, because when you're in that
Hmm.
elevated state, to be aware that I'm in an elevated state, that is, I think, the hardest step of it,
Yeah,
because it's like forest for the trees. You just can't always know that. But
right,
if you work
right,
on it, like any other skill, if you work on being
Mhm.
really present, and staying in the moment, knowing that you have the skills, that confidence, that you have ultimate control, that can be invaluable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And checking more often, right, is one of those pieces.
Yeah.
So when you check on how you're doing more often and just make it a part of your daily habit. So like I joke with people when I say, just do it every time you pee. Every time you pee, check in with yourself and see where you're at and do one of these things to bring yourself down, and you're going to catch it a lot more often, or once
Right.
an hour, or every time you take a drink, or whatever it is for you. Put it with something
Yeah.
that you're already know you're going to do on a regular basis, and make it part of your daily routine, because we need to check in more often now. It builds up really fast.
I love that you mentioned peeing in general, because intuitive eating and peeing are always compared to one another, because
Hmm.
hunger is just another bodily, process that happens much like peeing. And so
Yeah.
the analogy is that if we know we have to pee, we don't say, well, what else can I do instead of pee? We just pee because we have to.
Right.
And with
Right.
intuitive eating, when you say I'm hungry, sometimes we'll be like, well, maybe I'm just thirsty. Well, maybe I'll chew a piece of gum. Well, maybe I'll, distract myself and instead of peeing. Like we never do that
Mhm.
with excretion things. So I just wanted to throw that in there because it was like I don't know, something that always comes up in session,
Yeah.
with clients. But yeah, it like, and getting in touch with ourselves, like what is it that we need? Do we need to pee? Do we need to eat?
Right.
Do we need a glass of water? I can't tell you how many times I have gone like crazy on my husband, or something happens and I'm really emotionally dysregulated, and it was due to something like thirst, and it was like the
Yeah.
simple, and we all do that, but just looking back, like how many times have I let myself get really thirsty? Like probably a lot.
Yeah. Right. Well, and being a mom has shown me how that's not something that we are born with. Our
Hmm.
kids are not. You have to learn to check in with yourself and ask yourself, do you need to pee? I mean, they will get zonked into, a video game or something like that. And then will completely be, like, so a class thing that's going on right now with my son is that he'll go out after dinner, and then he wants to play Fortnite with his friends because that's when they are all on there.
Right. Yeah.
So he goes up there, and we tell him every time, if you're going to want a snack after dinner, if you're going to want dessert, you need to do it before it's bedtime.
Hmm.
You're going to need to come down and do it. And invariably, he has not figured out, because he gets so zonked in there,
Yeah.
and then he's starving. And and then we've got this whole thing about, a bedtime, and you need to be thinking about that ahead of time. So we're trying to help him learn how to do that by giving him little reminders and little prompts to check in midway.
Right.
And that's working, but it's not something that they know right away,
Well, those video games,
and
they look so fun. I'm not a big video game person, but I can imagine just getting into that mode and it's like the world disappears. Their
yeah,
needs,
and video
they
games.
can't even feel their needs.
Right. It's like that, but a lot of times just life can be that engaging for us,
Of course.
particularly if we're like high worriers, or we're, in our head anxious a lot.
Yeah.
We're so much in our heads that we're really not checking in with our bodies.
Right.
So it is something that you might not have ever learned, and you might, even as an adult, have to actively teach yourself to
Hmm.
check in more often, and then also to know, what are those cues, right? Am I hungry? Am I anxious, or am I lonely? What am I actually experiencing when my stomach is upset?
Yeah.
What's the label that I'm going to put on it? Is it
I might even
accurate?
add, if I'm hungry, what is going to be the most satisfying to me? Because our body
Yeah.
will, if we feel like a cold coming on, we will naturally crave oranges for the vitamin C and things like that. But if we don't
Hmm.
listen, then there's no hope
Right.
of us ever, coming through for our bodies like it wants, wants to be able to trust us. But if we're constantly ignoring it, then, that goes out the window a little bit. So I
Yeah.
really feel like your approach and intuitive eating actually are very symbiotic here.
Yeah. Yeah, we do a lot of somatic work, and we work with a lot of people because we deal with so much sexual trauma.
Sure.
We do work with a lot of people that have history of eating disorders and have been to other treatment centers and things like that. And we really try to work with people on, that piece of just listen to what your body is trying to tell you, whether it's about eating or if it's about your emotions. There's so much wisdom in our bodies that we miss.
Yes.
And I think that that's one of the things that people are able to make a big shift with, is when they're actually listening to their bodies and have a good relationship with them. It's really important.
But Traci, this Instagram influencer told me to eat 4 cookies, and that's my food for the day, and I'm going to lose 18 pounds in a month. I mean, this is the logic that I hear sometimes. Is like, but this fad diet is the ticket, or keto, or now that I'm on paleo, my world is, all better. And it's kind of maddening because there's nowhere in there when they're kind of spouting off about the latest and greatest thing. There's nothing in there about body wisdom. And they have the ultimate tool right in front of them, and yet they're looking for like an outside source of comfort, validation, belonging, community, because it's so insidious.
Yeah. Well, right. And so I tend to go with, well, why do you want to lose weight? Right.
Right.
Once we get to the whys, then most often listening to your body is closer to that. So let's say that you want to lose weight so that you have more energy, right? Well, is eating the 3 cookies once a day really going to give you more energy? No, right? Just losing weight for losing weight's sake doesn't actually, most of the time it makes you feel terrible.
Right.
And not very energetic, right? But if actually listening to your body and you're doing the things that your body is craving, then you're going to crave more movement, and you're going to crave more water, and you're going to start listening to your emotions. Things are going to start moving, including your metabolism rate. And that's when things start changing in a positive way, and it's more mind, body, and relationships. It's the whole package, instead of just losing weight because it's supposed to make us feel happier. Most of the time it isn't actually. And the fad diets, they're very well researched. They don't work. They just pop right back on.
Right.
And so that's what we focused on, is the why, and what's going to be the most effective way to get you to that why. Let's not just take this thing off social media. Let's actually break it down for you. Is it actually working? And
you might even
most people
crave movement.
give it up real quick.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And I even have people that will start, running or doing something that's really athletic because their body, as they've finally gotten back in touch with their body, and it's finally said, we want to run it again. We ran in high school, and now we want to run again, or whatever. And I think that's always so miraculous when we can do something that's not a punishing exercise. It's not because I want to earn having a muffin later or whatever the treat is. But it's just pure joy. It comes from a place where this feels good to my body, and I intrinsically want this thing, which I think is sort of like the ultimate way to do exercise.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, that's a good place. I think we're going to kind of end it here, but thank you so much, Traci. You've been such a great guest on the show, and I really appreciate you coming on. Do you want to tell anybody like where to find you on social media, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we're at Facebook at Hope for the Journey, and Instagram is Hope for the Therapy. And we've got a YouTube channel. I don't know I'm new to YouTube, so I'm not quite sure how to call out my YouTube channel. I think it's under Hope for the Journey, but I'm not positive. So I'll have to find that, and I can send you the information, put it in the notes.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely put it
but yeah, and our website is hopeforthejourney.org.
Oh,
so Everything's through the journey.
Wonderful. That's the way to do it. Then make it easy for
Yeah.
everybody. Great, super. Well, I'm at Food Counselor on Instagram, Twitter, all the things. We do have a Facebook page for Bluebird Counseling Center, and that'll do it. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you. It was great talking.
You too. Take care.